In the meantime, if you'd like, you can get yourself ready with props and such if you haven't already. So for example, having some blocks, ties, Dynabands, or yoga belts on hand. And if you don't have those, that's okay. You can use maybe even a cloth belt that you have. It's always a good idea to have your yoga mats. And if you don't have a cushion like a Zafu, a meditation cushion, you can always grab a blanket or two, or blanket or two, a couple of pillows instead of like say a bolster, for example. And welcome to the person that just joined us. So again, my name is Pam. Welcome to yoga. Today we're going to be trying to approach our practice with a little bit of gentleness and ease. So I would invite you today, as always, to decide whether you'd like to start on your mat on your back, as I would usually recommend, especially if you're tired, which we tend to be when it's a little bit dark and dreary outside, depending on where you're at. So if you're lying on your mat, you're letting your knees rest together, and your feet come apart, and your arms to be comfortably away from you by your sides with your palms face up, just to let your shoulders ease and relax into the mat a little bit more. If your back feels fine, you're welcome to stretch your legs out long, maybe let them be a little bit wider than your mat, if that feels good for your body. And if you wish, if you have pillows or blocks or blankets, you can always put them underneath your knees or even a chair, just to give yourself a little bit more support. That just helps your back to relax a little bit more. Otherwise, as always, you can sit with me. And whatever position you're in, to begin, just get really comfortable. So if you're seated, perhaps sitting on a block or a cushion or a blanket, and this just allows your hips to tip a little bit forward to get your spine nice and long. And so just take a few moments to settle in. Fidget if you need, move or stretch if you need. To settle into the earth. Become present. Just taking the next few breaths as you breathe in to fill your belly, and as you breathe out to let your belly fall back. To invite a sense of letting go of any holding. And if it helps, as you take your next couple of breaths out, sigh them out, maybe even with a noise, and let them come out of your mouth. So inhaling through the nose, expand the belly. Exhale and sigh it out. Maybe even make that noise or even a louder one. Just taking a few moments here to ease into the ground. To let go of the day, whatever it's been for you. And as you rest and breathe for a few moments to prepare yourself for your practice, an invitation to set an intention, to find ease in your stillness today. For many of us, finding stillness is difficult all by itself. And when we get into a yoga pose, sometimes finding stillness can also be difficult. Or perhaps the difficulty is the stillness of your mind in that pose. Again, taking the next couple of breaths to set your intention for your practice. And if that doesn't resonate with you, perhaps it's something else like expressing gratitude for yourself today for finding yourself on your mat. It can take a lot of courage to give ourselves permission to take some time for ourselves. And to some that may sound silly, but for others of us, that may resonate quite loudly. And as you rest and breathe here for another few moments, bringing an awareness into the body to see if there's any holding anywhere going on, any tension. Inviting the breath there to expand those areas and to let them release maybe just a little bit. Perhaps it's difficult to release entirely. If you can, fantastic. If you can't, that's okay too. There's no judgment in this space. Being with your breath, being present, being in this moment with this breath. Let there be nothing else. And in a few moments, when it feels right for you, begin to invite subtle movement into the body, circling into the wrists and the ankles, wiggling the fingers and the toes. And no matter whether you're seated or lying back, having a big yawn and a stretch, and doing whatever your body says feels good in this moment. And I invite you to take a hold of your belt or have it close by. And we'll just have it nearby so that as we kind of begin to move a little bit and fidget a little bit, we start to invite a little bit of ease as we move. So if you were working with me last day, we really focused on moving from our core. So if you can keep that in mind today, that helps you support your poses in stillness. So as you exhale your right knee towards your chest, begin to draw circles on the ceiling with your knees. And if it's okay for your back, you can work with both legs at the same time, either in opposition or together. Whatever is right for your body today. If your back is tired, then perhaps just working with one leg at a time. And this is just going to help us get that synovial fluid moving in our back body, or moving in our hips to support our movements for today. So once you've worked in both directions with both legs, eventually use your core, exhale your belly back, allow your legs to float back to the floor. From here, we'll reach our arms to the ceiling, place our hands on our elbows. We'll just do a couple of circles in each direction with our elbows. Still, there's your breath. Still trying to have that awareness of moving from your core, moving from within, moving from your center. Eventually come back to center. As you breathe out your next breath, engage and bring your belly back and allow your arms to float to one side in this position. So my hands are on my elbows, but I'm not squeezing or pushing down on them. I never want to put any pressure on a joint. Eventually, I'm going to exhale, come back, pause in center, and all the way over to the other side. Breathing there. And hopefully this feels really nice for the shoulders. One side you might go further than the other. Depending on your tightness, you may even feel this in the chest or in the ribs. the intercostal muscles. Eventually exhale, slowly come back. This time we're gonna allow our arms to float towards our forehead. And I'm cheating a little bit because I have a blanket behind me, but let go of your elbows as much as you need to widen your arms, to bring your arms back behind you to the mat, the floor, or a prop. I'm just finding a little bit of stretch here. So there's your breath. And exhalation of your belly back brings your arms back to center, and then shake that all out. Let it all go. We'll take hold of our belt or our tie or whatever it is that we have handy that'll help. If you don't have a tie or belt, you can always hang on to your pants or for now your socks. And when we're using the belt, we don't want to pull or tug on the belt. We want to roll our shoulder blades down our back, find that leg right in our hip socket, okay? And we're trying to find a place for the foot that's being in between being pointed and flexed. So play with that a little bit. I can't remember what my teacher calls it, but it kind of combines the words pointed and flexed. And that's kind of where you want to be, in between those points with the foot. Now, if your hamstrings are really tight, I know my students usually joke with me that I have flexi Gumby hamstrings. You may be really bent here, and that's okay. And if you need to make your, bring your hands back on the belt, that's okay too, or even hold on to the thigh instead. Listen to your body and be where you are. Can you find your breath in this pose? And if you have flexi Gumby hamstrings, perhaps you're lengthening your other leg along the mat as if it's standing up. An invitation of the shoulders down your back, as we sometimes tend to roll them forward. To stay with your breath. And to allow your knees to be soft. So even though my legs are straight and yours may not be, and that's okay, we want the knees to not be locked. Okay, so there's a little bit of softness in the knees. Hanging out here for a breath or two more. If you need to, bend your down knee, switch your feet. And then again, finding that place in between being pointed and flexed on the other side. You may be even more bent on this side, depending on how tight the hamstrings are or aren't. Maybe your legs are long, legs right into your hip socket. And if you need that extra bit, lengthening your other leg along the mat. And coming back to your breath. So this should feel like a nice, juicy stretch. For some of you, if this is not as juicy as you'd like it to be because you really have flexible hamstrings, an invitation of your belly back may allow you to tip your leg towards you in this position, but it's not from tugging or pulling on the belt. It's from the hip letting go. Being with your breath. If you've tipped, come back to center, unbend the down leg, release the foot, shake it up. So we're eventually finding stillness, but we want to, again, do it with ease. So from here, we're going to go back to the first side, but we're going to change our hands and just have our belt in one hand. From here, with an exhalation of your belly back, you're going to let your leg tip a little bit towards you and then out to the side, wherever that is for you. I find making a nice little shelf with my elbow on the floor kind of helps me. And you can take your opposite hand and really invite your opposite hip towards the mat, even taking that other knee out towards the other direction, so to the left if your right leg is out, just so that you can counterbalance yourself a little bit. And you're breathing here in this, again, nice juicy stretch with the knee not lost. Shoulder blades down the back. Still, there's your breath. In your time, exhale, bend the knees, slowly come back to center, and we'll come to the other side. So if you need to bend the knee here, you can. You want to try to come into a gentle twist if that works for your back. So now I've switched the belt to the other hand. I'm exhaling my belly back to perhaps even float all the way over into a twist. Keeping your knees bent makes things a little bit easier. So for example, anytime I lengthen my limbs, work becomes perhaps a little bit more challenging. So if you need to, keep your limbs more bent. Again, I've created a shelf on the floor with my arm on the other side. And I'm keeping my right shoulder, so my right leg is across my body towards the left. I'm keeping my right shoulder on the mat. Some of you may be able to come all the way to the floor. My glutes say no, so I'm going to stay here. But I could also have a prop under that foot as well, just to give myself a little bit more support. I'm breathing here, finding stillness and ease. My shoulder blades are rolled down my back. And maybe as I breathe into this pose, perhaps the glutes start to release a little bit. In your time, with an exhalation of your belly back, bend both knees, come back into center, release into your leg stretch again, and then in your time, let that go, shake that out. From here, lengthen both legs along the mat, and you might notice that one feels longer than the other. Not. And then when you're ready, bend your knees again, use your belly. Find that other foot into your regular leg stretch. Shoulder blades roll down your back. And then from here, again, finding that in-between pointed and flex, taking the belt in the left hand this time if you're using the left leg, or vice versa. Exhale, tip a little bit towards you and then away. Again, maybe you're taking that right hand and really pressing on that hip, or even opening up your opposite leg to let that counterbalance so that you've got a little bit of weight helping you stay having the hips square on the mat, even as you stretch out to the side. So again, bending the limbs makes this easier. So if it's a little bit tough, if it feels like a bit too much, always back off. All of the poses we do, any movement we do is a suggestion. If it doesn't feel right in your body, unfortunately, I can't tell you that. So I need you to listen. And when we find stillness, sometimes it's easier to listen. Being with your breath. On an exhalation, bending that knee, coming back to center, switching your hands, and again, coming to the other side. And again, perhaps you're not coming in, you don't have to come into a twist in this pose. If it feels right for you, you can. Keeping the knees bent will help. If this is difficult, you can always lengthen your legs if it feels good for your body. One of my teachers has always said there's no pain in yoga. If there's pain, your body's trying to tell you something. So we may feel a juicy stretch, but we don't want to ever feel pain in a joint or in the back. Maybe your leg comes all the way to the mat, maybe not, or a prop. And you find ease as you become still in this pose. And even in stillness, there's always our breath. So when we find stillness in our body, it can make feeling the movement of the breath a little bit easier. Because even in stillness, there's always subtle movement. In your time, bending both knees, coming back to center. Taking your belt to the side, shake out the legs, shake out the arms, whatever feels good for you. And from here, I'll invite you to take your socks off if you haven't already. And we're going to step our feet a little bit closer to our buttocks if that works for your knees, placing our palms beside us, rolling our shoulder blades down our back, moving with our core. So just come into a pelvic lift. If you really feel like your body wants a bridge pose right now or a back bend, go for it. But I invite you to just take this first bridge a little bit easy and just come into a pelvic lift. So I'm lifting straight up with my pelvis, just feeling a really nice, gentle stretch, a little bit of work in the thighs. Shoulder blades roll down my back. And depending on how much you've been using your thighs, they may be on fire, and that's okay. Muscle burn and pain are two different things, and eventually your body will be able to tell you the difference. Use your core to come down one vertebrae at a time as you slowly exhale. And then let the legs go, shake it out. Rolling to your right side for a breath or two, or if you feel like you want to rock up, by all means do so. Eventually use your arms to bring you to a seated position. From our seat, we'll come onto all fours for 4 cats. So I have a double mat, so I may not need to pad my knees, but if your knees don't love being on the floor, you may want to put a blanket underneath them. So when I come to table pose, I want to spread out my fingers, roll my shoulder blades down my back, my inner elbows look forward. And from here, I'm going to do 4 cats. So head down, head up, and lateral cats, so side to side. So if you were familiar with this, please go ahead. Otherwise, you can work with me. No matter what you're doing, work with your breath and your core. Movement starts in your hips. Exhale to slowly curl the spine. Tail comes down, head comes down, back comes up. We'll keep breathing as we come into each pose so that we can find a little bit of stillness in the pose. So usually when we do spinal waves or cat-cow or cat head down and cat head up, we move on our inhalation to cow or head up cat. This time I'd invite you to wait for an exhale or a breath out and slowly exhale and tip your spine. Your tailbone looks up, back comes down, head comes up, shoulder blades roll down your back. Breathing in this pose to feel that. Finding stillness here, finding ease in this pose. And we may want to lock our elbows here, but we want to keep them a little bit soft. Eventually, we're going to exhale, pause for a tiny moment in table, and then begin to look our bum towards us and us towards our bum as if we're wrapping our body around a pole. We still find our breath here. Breathing there into this pose. Eventually coming back to center and then going to the other side. So I look at my bum looks at me. And then letting that go. As always, anytime you need a break, you can come into child's pose. So what is child's pose? Widen your knees, bring your toes together, reach your hands forward, find the mat with your forehead. If the forehead doesn't come to the mat, you can stack your hands or fists to bring the mat to you. Take your time to have a breath or two in child's pose. And then when you're ready, we'll come to our first dog of the day. So before we find stillness in dog, get all your fidgets out. And because it's our first dog of the day, probably, take your time to come into it and then fiddle around if you need to. So roll your shoulder blades down your back, curl your toes, exhale your belly back, move up from your core, lifting you off the ground. And then maybe you're bike pedaling your feet, you're moving your hips, you're shaking your head no, moving the arms and shoulders. And if you need a child's pose before you find stillness, if your body's tired, listen. However, if you feel like you can find stillness in this pose, once you're fidgeted, take your time to find dog, whatever that is for you. If your hamstrings are tight, you might have trouble having the legs straight, and that's okay. Maybe your heels are lifted. If you have flexi Gumby hamstrings, perhaps your feet are on the floor. And still there's your breath. Still there's your shoulder blades rolling down your back. Still your head is let go. Your shoulders are open. Your belly hugs in. In your time when you come down, if it's okay for the hands on the wrists, perhaps hover slowly, come out slowly. Use your core to slowly begin to bring your knees towards the mat. If you need to adjust your hands to do so, and then eventually touch down. And find child's pose for a couple of breaths. So your forehead reaches the mat. Your mat doesn't come to your forehead. Bring your hands underneath your forehead to bring the mat to you. Taking your time to take a couple of breaths there. In your time, bring the elbows down, the palms into prayer. And everything's the same as it was in table pose. So in table pose, my hands are under my shoulders, knees are under hips. All I'm doing is setting up a little triangle here with my fingertips being the tip of the triangle and my elbows being the two angles there. And we're going to come to dolphin pose. So dolphin pose is essentially downward dog on your elbows. So everything the same. I'm going to roll my shoulder blades down my back. My toes are curled. I exhale my belly back to float up from my core, allowing me to lift up. And the crown of the head comes towards the mat in between my elbows, but I don't actually rest my head on the mat. It may touch, but I'm not putting any weight in my head. Still the shoulder blades roll down the back. Everything the same as dog pose. Head is let go, shoulders are let go as much as they can in this position. Can you find strength and stillness as you breathe here for a moment? And perhaps as you breathe, you can release the shoulder blades more down the back. You can hug your tummy in tighter and maybe find more of an angle with your body. Eventually, slowly come down, hovering the knees for a moment if you can. Challenge yourself, use your core, and then eventually slowly come down. And we'll come to extended puppy pose here. So keeping the elbows up, stretching the hands forward, forehead comes to the mat, but the toes are curled this time. So the difference between this and child, feet are in line with the knees, toes are curled, hands are forward, elbows are up. You can always put a prop under your head if your head doesn't come to the mat. blanket, a pillow, a block. So take a breath or two there. And then in your time, come to standing however it's most comfortable for you. So perhaps it's curling into dog and then walking your feet to your hands, or maybe you're hopping or jumping forward. And eventually maybe even enjoy a forward bend while you're here. Bending your knees, inhale all the way up. And then exhale to namaste, mountain pose. Let that go. Take the body out, let that all go. So we can move before we find stillness again. Taking a moment to reconnect with your breath. Really spread out your toes, find your feet, find the center point of your feet. So maybe walking forward on the heels and the toes and back. Maybe even coming to the inside edges and the outside edges of the feet. To really find that center point of the feet into the earth. And the center point of the head or the crown of the head towards the sky. Feeling the belly rise into the room. And exhale, breathing out, feeling the belly come back towards your spine. Closing your eyes if you're comfortable. Finding a moment of stillness in Tadasana or mountain pose. Being with each breath. In each moment. Let there be nothing else. When you feel ready, gently wiggle the fingers, move the legs, open the eyes, shake that out. And we're going to come to a gentle balancing pose to see if we can find stillness in our balancing. The tree pose may be really familiar to you, and you can take it wherever it is for you. And if you need to, have a wall or a piece of furniture beside you to give you some support. Make sure the furniture isn't going to move, though. Pretty sure the wall's not going to, unless you turned into Superman overnight or Superwoman or super person. A superhero, that's a better word. All right. So we're going to find Tadasana or mountain pose. We're going to connect with our breath. And if we've lost that kind of center point feeling in our feet, we're going to find that again, making sure our knees are soft. We don't want to lock the knees. We want to make it a little bit soft, even if the legs are straight. Finding your mountain. When you're ready, pick a spot to stare at that doesn't move. If you want to challenge yourself, you can close your eyes. Balancing is just more difficult that way. So when you're ready, start to shift your weight into your left foot. Slowly begin to pick up your left foot, and you can either place it on top of your other foot. You can place your the sole of your foot between your knee and your ankle. If you're feeling super flexible today, you can place it between your hip and your knee, but you never want to place it on your knee, okay, or on your ankle. Never want to put pressure on a joint. Okay, so if you need the wall, use the wall. Finding that pose wherever that pose is for you so that you can find some stillness. If you've shifted your hips to bring the leg up, can you reshift them so they're level? As if you had headlights on your hip bones, you wanted them to face forward and you wanted them to be even, not askew. long and tall in your spine. So there's your breath. The down knee is not locked. A little bit soft. Reaching through the center point of your head towards the sky and through the sole of your down foot towards the earth. Allow the ground to hold you up. We may wobble or move in this pose, but try to find as much stillness as you can. Your mind is really busy. You may be all over the place, and that's okay. Balancing is challenging on the best of days. We have a busy mind. It's even more challenging. You can decide what you'd like to do with your hands. If you're using a wall for support or a piece of furniture, make sure it's beside your down leg. So shift legs whenever you need to, eventually shaking that out, letting that go, and coming to the other side. Again, if you shift your hips, try to shift them back. Make sure that on whatever side you're on, you're not putting any pressure on your joints. So if your foot is resting, like right now, my foot is resting on my calf, which is fine. But if I put it on my knee or my ankle, that would be problematic. So picking that spot to stare at that doesn't move. And if your hands don't work in Namaste and you're not using furniture to help you, you can always be an airplane. Or even come into extended Tadasana, into your tree pose. And if you're really comfortable there, you can even abandon the stillness for a little bit. Well, the stillness, as much stillness as there was, and sway in the breeze like a tree. Work with both sides evenly. Eventually shake it out, let it go. Move or shift in any way that you need. Have your blocks handy. Or if you don't have blocks, if I forget my blocks, I usually bring my water bottle. As long as it doesn't move, I could use a big bottle of vinegar or something like that. A jar filled with something heavy, anything like that. We're going to do a standing forward bend, just to release from that. We're going to take it wide. So have your furniture or your blocks close by. You can always use a chair as well. We're going to step our feet a little bit wider than hip width. We're going to rotate our thighs open like a book opening, bend our knees, exhale, engage our belly to come to a flat back. So perhaps a flat back for you means hands on props. Perhaps it means hands on the floor. You decide what works best for you and your body. And be comfortably wide in your pose. So if you're used to doing a wide astride, you can be a little bit wider. You can invite the crown of the head towards the mat. Just making sure that the shoulder blades are rolled down the back. The thighs are opening like a book. The knees are a little bit soft. And there's your breath. Where can you find stillness in this wide-legged forward bend? Where is this pose for you today? In your time, adding a little bit of a twist, if this works for you. You're going to walk your hands towards your foot on the left side. I'm mirroring you. You can always use your block instead if holding on to your leg and looking forward doesn't work for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold on to my calf and pretend that I can look underneath my thigh. And we stay as long as it's comfortable. Maybe you're bringing your blocks with you back to the center and then eventually shifting to walk to the other side. And maybe you need blocks on one side, but not the other. You can have different sides with different levels of flexibility. If you're not using your blocks, perhaps you're holding onto that leg, onto the calf, and as if you could look underneath that thigh, the back wall behind you. In your time coming back to center, toe heel the feet in part way, bend the knees, engage the belly, and inhale to float all the way up, letting that go. When you're ready, we're actually going to come back down to the mat. So have your blocks in your belt and your blanket nearby. Have what you'll need for relaxation or shavasana, just close to you. From here, we're going to come onto our feet. And we're going to see if we can do a little bit of work while we balance in a different way. And if we can find stillness here. And you can laugh at me as I don't find stillness, and hopefully you can. So you're going to move your personal cushions away. Okay? You want to be right on your sitting bones. And so maybe you're working with the legs really bent. Maybe you're helping yourself with a belt, or maybe you can hold on to your pants or your foot. So let's really bend the knees as if we were going to come into cobbler's pose or Baddha Konasana. So basically what's that pose? That's your feet together, your knees open, sitting up tall. From here, we can do 2 fingers around the big toe. We can hold on to the thigh instead, or maybe even onto the ankle. Okay? So you decide what works for you. And we'll start just by rolling the shoulder blade down the back wherever you are. You can always use a belt for this if your limbs aren't working long enough for you. That's okay too. But we want to try to do a balance. So exhale our belly back and lengthen this leg out. Maybe your hamstrings are really tight and you're here and this is your pose, and that's okay. Listen to your body. Trying one side. I mean, if you're an old hat at this and you're already doing 2 sides, by all means, enjoy, go ahead. If not, just stick with one side and see if you can find stillness here. With the shoulder blade roll down the back, with the elbow soft, the knee is soft. Long and tall in your spine, belly hugged in. Breathing here. Eventually come out with grace. And try the other side. Maybe you just stay here. Maybe this is your pose. Keep the shoulder blade rolling down the back, lengthen the leg. Maybe you're using a belt or holding underneath your leg. Listen to your body. Still on your sitting bones. Can you find stillness? If it works for you, maybe only underneath the thighs, work with both legs. If you roll onto your sacrum, make sure you roll back onto those sitting bones. So those are the sticky outy bones that hook into the floor. If you need to readjust to make sure you're not on your personal cushions first, please do. Maybe you're holding onto the ankles and you can lengthen out. Maybe 2 fingers around your big toes and you can lengthen out. Listen to your body. Can you find stillness in this pose? If you have a wall behind you, please move into the center of the room because sometimes people rock back Okay, so please take care. Maybe just work with one side at a time if you're not feeling stable. Can you find a gentle breath in this pose? Shoulder blades roll down the back. Knees and elbows are soft. Can you come out with grace? Take that go, take that out. Move the legs. Rock on your sitting bones. From here, taking one leg back and then bending the other leg in front. Sitting up nice and tall. Eventually, we're going to walk our arms towards our bent knee and begin to slowly walk forward, almost like a half or modified pigeon. If you wish, maybe you come towards the mat. Maybe you can even put your forehead on a block or something like that. My body says no today. Maybe your body says yes today. Just listen to your body. So perhaps coming forward just a gentle bit. My glutes say no today, so I'm not going to come any further than this. But if you can, some people may be able to lie across the thigh and maybe even get the forehead towards the mat. Perhaps backing off today, though, so that you can really lead with your sternum or lead with your heart to reach forward with the body. Finding a couple breaths of stillness in this pose. Long in your spine. In your time, slowly walk your hands back, slowly coming upright and switching your legs. Again, sitting up nice and tall. Maybe one side is tighter than the other. Maybe you have your block handy if needed. Before you go anywhere, sit up nice and tall. Lead with your sternum. Shoulder blades roll down your back. Exhale your belly back. Move from your core. Move from your center. Maybe your forehead comes to, in my case today, maybe a couple of blocks. That's probably as close as she gets. Maybe you don't even worry about that. And just enjoy a nice juicy stretch in the legs, perhaps in the glutes, the hip flexors. Wherever you're feeling this pose, enjoy that juicy stretch. Find that stillness, even though there's the breath. You may find that the body releases a bit as you continue to breathe. But it's in this ease and quiet and stillness we can actually hear and see those subtle movements. Taking your time here. Long in your spine. Eventually slowly come back up. Sitting up nice and tall. Swinging the legs around in front again, shaking that out. From here, we'll just come to a gentle forward bend. Exhale, leading from your sternum. Maybe you can reach your toes, maybe you don't. I know it always looks like my elbows are locked, but they actually bend the other way. So try to keep your elbows soft. And your time to slowly come back. Take what you need for Shavasana or relaxation pose. Have it close by. So if you want to have a bolster nearby or a pillow and blankets to put underneath you. And I'd invite you to challenge your core today before you come up or come down. Roll your sitting bones away. Put the soles of your feet on the floor. So I move my personal cushions. And then hopefully with more grace than I'm about to, straighten your arms, roll your shoulder blades down your back, and do a roll down. So roll all the way down to come down onto the mat. Before we relax into Shavasana, letting your knees windshield wiper back and forth. And then bringing your arms into a T position with your palms face up. From here, exhale your belly back and allow your knees, once they get to one side, to fall all the way over to that side. And if it's okay for your back and your neck, gently look in the opposite direction. Being with your breath here. Feeling that subtle movement of the breath in the body as you find stillness in this pose. Taking your next breath out, bring your belly back, your head back, your knees back. Windshield wipering your legs a few more times before you find yourself on the other side. Knees drop away, head looks to the opposite direction if that's okay for you. Just being with your breath in stillness. Where only the movement of the breath is what's happening. Letting those little micro movements happen with each breath. Sense of letting go. Really listening to the body. In your time, gently bring your head back to center and your knees with the best breath of your belly back. Move or stretch for the next couple of breaths in any way that you need to. So perhaps exhaling your belly back, bring your knees to your chest, have a nice rock from side to side, head, neck, shoulders, everything comes with you. Whatever your body's asking for, whatever it needs, take the next few breaths to try to just listen and do what it's asking you. And that's just practice. Many of us are not adept at listening to our bodies. But wherever you are, eventually find stillness in Shavasana. Maybe with the knees bent and resting together, or with blocks, bolster, or pillow under your knees, or even with the legs long on the mat. Just taking your time to find whatever pose feels right for you once you've moved in any way that you need to. As always, you can sit with me if you prefer. And if you're sitting, find a really comfortable position. Make sure you stay warm. Our body temperature tends to drop in relaxation. I'm just taking a moment or two to really settle back into the mat. And once you've settled into whatever pose you're working with, a reconnection with your breath, allowing your eyes to be gently closed if that's comfortable, or your gaze soft. And as you take your next few breaths in, fill your body from the tips of your toes to the top of your head with fresh oxygen. And sigh out your exhalation. Sigh your breath out. Make noise. Way louder than me. Taking a couple of breaths to really feel your body expand with your breath in, including your belly. Fall back with your breath out. Let go of anything you're holding. Letting go of that which no longer serves you. As you rest and breathe for a little while longer, and reap the benefits of your practice that you worked hard on today. Revisiting that intention that you set yourself at the beginning. An invitation to find ease in everything you do the rest of today. Whether that's ease in your body, especially in a difficult situation, or even if it's ease in your breath. And if it resonates with you, also allowing yourself to feel gratitude toward yourself for taking this time on your mat for you. Giving yourself permission for this time. Rest, breathe, let go. I'd invite you to stay in Shavasana as long as you wish. If you'd like to close your practice with us and you're lying back, take a moment to roll to your right side for a breath or two before using your arms to bring you to a seated position. Essentially wiggling your fingers and toes. stretching or moving in any way that feels right for you. In your time coming into namaste with your hands in front of your heart center and your eyes gently closed, and we'll take a breath in together, sweeping our arms up overhead. When you're ready, on your breath in, inhaling all the way up, stretching up, exhaling to bring your hands to heart center. Thank you so much for joining me for practice today. The soul or light or divine in me is honoring the soul or light or divine in you. Namaste. Thank you so much. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to type in the chat. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much.